Reverend Chairman, Σεβασμιότατε Νιγηρίας, Σεβαστή
Reverend Fathers and Eminencies, distinguished professors, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, my topic of discussion today shall be questions of religious freedom and diversity within the Eastern canonic tradition. I beg for your understanding because my voice is a bit tired today. And in advance I will ask for the Bishop of Nigeria's understanding, because we will be focusing mostly on Europe and Byzantium. So whatever references with respect to any other issue beyond Europe will be only indirect. The relationship of theory on human rights and Orthodox theology has been the object of research and even controversy, especially when it comes to the academic world over the last 2 decades. Most researchers apparently are in agreement in principle as to the fact that the content of the notion human rights is compatible with the Orthodox anthropology. The protection of the human being from the arbitrary behavior of other people or the power or the authority may be consolidated by highlighting human dignity, freedom, equality, and perhaps by acquiring better sense through the theology, the creation of human being in the example of the Creator, and the brotherhood of people, the society of people, the ontological equality, freedom, and ultimately the confirmation of the right to love and be loved, as very typically is mentioned by the Archbishop of Albania. Moreover, the ecumenical spirit of Christianity has determined the course of the Church through the ages, starting from the First Apostolic Council down to Paul and then in the Byzance. All of these revolutionary approaches co-shape the Orthodox ecclesiology, although they do encounter difficulties in their application and remain the pursuit of the community. Will you please ask the speaker to go a bit slower, please, much slower? This is reading a text, not translating, please. So there is no content of explanations of notions since they've been expressed from the beginning of the 20th century. One might again find in these sources certain archetypal reflections of rights. In order to be more specific in examining the degree of acceptance of such views within the canonic law of the Church, we have to have some explanations as to the character of the canonic law and its relationship to society, Roman law, factors that have affected the genesis and the shaping of this context from the Byzantine and on. The edicts of the Roman emperors of the beginnings of the second decade of the 4th century have radically changed the relationship between the Christianity and Roman authorities, giving it a new dimension when it comes to the relationship between the emperor and its citizens. Galerius and his successors started to come to grips with the fact that there is need for a better rapprochement of the citizens of a community that started to suffer from cohesion problems, and the possibility of Christianity to become the soul and the tool towards a reform. This new policies introduced by the 311 edict and then the 313 edict were assimilated by Constantine the Great and expanded it by giving it a new dimension. The traditional paganist Roman religion ceased to be the unique religion of the state and gradually ceded its place to Christianity. Nevertheless, after a more careful approach of the issue, it becomes apparent that the nucleus of the Roman political theory remained essentially unchanged. And this is because there was a continuation of the religious policy of the Roman emperors of the 3rd century, which perceived religion principally as the alliance of Rome with the deity for the salvation of Rome itself and the empire as a whole. The distancing from any kind of religious adoration and the case of agnosticism was considered more risky for the society than the exercise of a prohibited religion. The policy of religious tolerance of the beginning of the 4th century pertains a continuum of law that relied on the context of previous values. It was part of the obligations of the Judaic and other conclavia, and was further expanded. The traditional values like faith, justice, philanthropy, magnanimity, generosity, the care for public interest, the respect to the sacra, were acknowledged as values sine qua non for the security, the calmness, the concord, and the peace of the empire. That had started the procedure for the creation of a Christian community on earth, the creation of a single, an unum of organization comprising specific sectors. Will you please once again ask the speaker to slow down? Otherwise we will stop translating. There's a multiplicity of targets and pursuits. The Church tried to put its forces in order and diffuse the message of the gospel all over the world. That was further enhanced through the struggle of the apologists for the establishment of the vital relationship between Christianity and civilization. The materialization of such objective remained a very difficult task at best, if one is to consider the very fragile balances shaped by various religious traditions deeply rooted in the diversity of the local Christian communities. The empire, from the moment it became Christian, had to protect what it confesses, and the pursuit was not which kind of religion one was to protect, rather which of the various teachings that come from Christianity should be protected. Hence the question, what is Catholic faith and what is heresy? The other was the one that did not confess what the empire acknowledged as a true faith and was no longer a risk for the state. Apparently, the time of all those who love me, follow me was very distant. Religiosity had now a very intense political and social character. One of the first missions of the emperor was to immediately or indirectly confess faith throughout the empire. The faith that is the imperial faith was not always identical to the Orthodox faith of the Church. The policy of quest for an establishment of orthodoxy was at the antipode of heresy. That was a process that involved not just the emperor but the church. Deportatio was simultaneously an excommunicatio, which is an act of distancing of the impure person, therefore shooting away from the wrath of God. The respect of others, consequently, is not a task of the Church alone. From the moment the true faith is being determined by the emperor, automatically there is the establishment of who the others are, and they are dealt with in the spirit of the political and ecclesiastical canons. To determine the true faith, the emperor utilized councillors and institutions. Then the imperial orthodoxy was personified through specific bishops and confirmed through the legislation. Within such context, one should also ascribe the anti-heretical and anti-paganistic legislation promulgated by Constantine the Great and on. The legislation also chastised, on the basis of the internal structures, heresies and paganism. Factors like the degree of differentiation of a doctrine from the true faith, or the procedure of penetration in this or that province, the type of paganist faith, all these determine the severity of the punishments by the Church and the emperor. For example, Manichaeans, which according to the Romans were the most risky ones, were punished more severely, that of confiscation of their assets, exile, and even death. Nevertheless, one should also mention that it is one thing to issue anti-heretic edicts, and there's another thing trying to implement them. We are no longer in a position to know what was the extent and the intensity of application of the edicts by Theodosius and other emperors. What we may assume, nevertheless, is that there was no continuum, nor was there a cohesion of strictness. The death penalty was meant to deter rather than annihilate the heretics. Augustine believed that the punishment that the political authority may impose through the Church has a limit, that of the respect of life and corporal integrity of the human being and the maintenance of the spirit of charity of the Church. The chastising imposed waged worse results when all it does was coerce people to distance themselves from a major evil without being convinced of the reasons why this happens. According to Augustine, the Church is entitled to utilize its power to bring back to its context all the lost sheep and avert any others from being lost. The emperor was now the brave soldier of Christ. It was not without reason that he utilized his sword. Since he is in the service of God, he has to punish strictly whoever does evil. It has been explained that typologically the position of the Father of the Church and the authors of the Church may be classified in two orientations. One, that of the Emperor, which is expressed by Eusebius from Caesarea, synchronizing from the official version of the political theory, contributing to its embedding as well as its shaping. The second orientation, the critical one, knows some differentiations as to the radical character from author to author and is expressed principally by Chrysostomus. Such consideration is compatible with the overall theocratic perception of the time, although it distinguishes the person that exercises power from the power itself. What we have already described, in no way should they be meant to reflect the modern ideas on tolerance and dialogue. Nevertheless, they do reflect the perception of all the people, Christian and non-Christian of that time, as to the role of the religious identity in the public sector and that of the empire vis-à-vis religion. Now let us go into the canons of the Church, the laws. The relationship of the Emperor to the Church and its historical evolution are reflected in a very eloquent way in the shaping of resources of the laws of the Church. Not accidentally, in the first centuries of the life of the Church, local traditions echoing their own civilization never were organized in a corpus of legal character. The chronological digesta of the 4th century were replaced by systematic corpuses of different contents after the codification by Justinianus, and the highlighting of such laws as equal sources of law. We have this combination of laws and canons. The legal canons dedicated the 12th title to heretics, Jews and Greeks, and also quotes the relevant Byzantine laws, but neither there nor anywhere else in the past in the canonic tradition was there a system of ecclesiastical organization or that of positive law. The articulation of Oriental corpuses confirm this view. There is a practical purpose, and it was that to deal with the actual problems, not future ones. This is for me to determine what are the expectations from canonic law. The canonic law cannot be expected to give an answer to everything, all the more since we are now in need of a systematic way of dealing with problems. In recapitulating and in the light of the considerations by Lee Barnaby on the traditional society, we may allege the following. All religions are political, with the exception of secularized societies. The obligation of the predominant group to impose orthodoxy and true practice to the persons for the salvation. Rephrasing by the too quickly speaking speaker. The obligation of to impose this kind of behavior despite one's will. When it comes to traditional societies, exiting a religion is equal to exiting the society. The predominant religious system is looking for the return of the person to the true faith. When there is a minority, then it's all about cohesion of the persecuted religions. The religions have always been utilized as a pole of expression of identity. Each religion legitimizes hierarchies and ascribes the social order to the celestial order. Hence, the coercive power that is imperative, resisting social order, is resistance to the gods. The ascription of Christianity in the public sphere did not kill the spirit, but shifted it, and the Europeans allowed themselves some cosmic deities, like the totalitarian ideologies of the 20th century. Let us now come to present day. The way whereby the modern person perceives the world around one is different. It is the state, the rule of law, and the shape of society. All this is impregnated by the ideas of the Age of the Lights. Enlightenment. The religious wars in Europe showed the need to shift away from the religious fanatism, and on the basis of the law we have nature, the cosmos, and then the human being that needs to coexist peacefully with others. Today the human being benefits from rights for being a human being. This is the family we're talking about, a term that is utilized by the Declaration of Human Rights, and this family is the humankind, not because the human being is the reflection of God. Factors like the race, gender, sexual orientation, natural capacities, religious confession, and others should never be criteria for marginalization or discrimination. The state is supposed to protect the rights of all members of its community, faithful and unfaithful, on the basis of primary authority given by general suffrage. So the state is neutral as far as religion is concerned, trying to keep a safe distance, equal distance from all religion in respect of the diversity of all. Although equality, dignity and justice were able to be confirmed socially, and even in reality the rights are being transgressed every day and still are an objective that has not been attained. The Roman Catholic religion that has encompassed all this has changed radically. It stands already since the 1960s. With the beginning of the Encyclium Rerum Novarum, the Pacem in Terris and Dignitatis Humanae. Later on, the teaching of the Second Vatican Council boils down to the 1983 Codex and still is very much settled today. Going one step further, there is a discussion of the canonic rights within its jurisdiction, the social rights of its faithful. The rules 2 to 8 and on of the Codex comprise the list of the obligations and the rights of the faithful. The Orthodox Church doesn't maintain any attitude vis-à-vis the subject, differentiating not between churches but also within its history, religion. In its church there are different approaches reflecting different perceptions as to its position in the public sphere, the limit of cooperation with the state, the canonic relationship with other sister churches. In the Western world, the Orthodoxy is a minority but still benefits from rights that have been secured under any public order on the basis of the special system of relation between state and religion. Normally it is an acknowledged religion has equal rights with other communities. The relationship with other Christian confessions is usually good, which is what makes it easier for the adoration to take place. Problems and some conflicts are all natural to happen, but this is the case with all other national Orthodox churches. In Greece, essentially, there has been an effort by the state to shun the religion from politics, so there is a specific secular state system ensuring the church legal entity and some privileges in the way it is dealt with by the legislation. Such latter privilege treatment was limited essentially over the last few years with legislative amendments, which most of the cases have been dictated by condemning rulings for Greece by the Court of Human Rights. Such changes made of the Greek state more secular and somehow deblock the church from perceptions that up to the 30s were hindering any development. In the early 2000s, the authorities of the Russian church publicized its doctrine on the relationship between the state and the church on a series of some very critical issues, the basis of the social context, therefore expressing the official position of the Patriarchate of Moscow on state and secular society. As we can read in the text, its character is determined by its reference to the needs of the members of the Russian Orthodox Church over the long historic course under the Patriarchate of Moscow and beyond. Such doctrine is now getting new dimensions in the wake of the basic doctrine by the Church of Moscow on human rights, 2008 and on, as it has been explained that this text goes far beyond its didactic character in the spirit of the Doctrine of 2000 and becomes a tool of foreign policies of the Church. This is the same direction taken by the foreign policy of the Russian Federation by way of a novel notion of spiritual security. It takes some research as to the deeper understanding of this venture, but I do have the view that this may be an effort to rekindle old recipes to the purpose of not just reinforcing the cohesion of the Russian society, but also this is an effort to allow the Patriarchate of Moscow to regain power within and beyond its territory. In terms of conclusion, the quest of points of contact amongst the various archetypes of human rights and actions as shaped by the innovation in the absence of religion element is useful both for Christians and for those who work for human rights, because it contributes to the amplification of méfiance and prejudice. The point of reference is always the human being, the tormented modern human being. The persistence on such stereotypes is no longer excused in the postmodern times of today, dominated as they are by a crisis of values and a very confusing religiosity. Human rights are the indexes of our culture because they reveal cases of fall in human dignity and the realization of the need for a reinstatement of injustice. Here we may see analogies to the law of the Church, the canons of which simultaneously are indexes of spirituality, so of debacle and construction. All those things to be done are not few, nor are they easy. In reality, the Church is to renounce rights legated by the imperial past, and the rights that has been maintained through its autocephatal character. But historic privileges, like very typically said by Chrysostom of Ephesus, although limited at times, were never questioned, especially in the wake of the creation of the modern Greek state. The Church is also called to go beyond the very typical insecurity that has to do with its position within the state, which implies getting out of a situation of self-contentment in the globalized arena, operating within the context of secularized society. The society is no longer attained from top to bottom, meaning by way of various forms of authority, but this is a down-to-top approach with much capitalization on dignity. And just today, the right of the Church to self-determine itself is guaranteed by the Greek Constitution. Article 13 of the Greek Constitution goes to that direction. But the Church is also to work for its unity and for the evangelization of the world. If Kant's autonomy is perceived as a freedom of thought, a critical dialogue with traditional values, and the highlighting of individual rights and capacities, it might be a criterion for the evolution of the Church. The critical approach of canons for the purification of the sometimes criticized and undermined values of the Church while maintaining the message of religious anthropology may be a method. The canonical law has, first of all, to respect the freedom of the faithful. The respect of the freedom of diversity is not a question of those beyond. It also has to do with the community for diversity and for the multiplicity. Let's not forget that in the Christian communities of the time there have been various canonic traditions relying on the political particularities in a way similar to the one experienced in the communities around the world, each one of them having its own tradition. The interpretation of human rights as an ecumenical ethos of peace is compatible with the peace for the world and the ethos for the atonement. Thank you very much for your attention.